Okay, next we're going to go to agenda item number 5, Carlsbad Boulevard Pedestrian Improvement Project.
I'm not presenting, but this staff report will be presented by Miriam Jim, and as well as our associate engineer, Lindy Pham. So I think they're getting ready.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioner.
You need to be in presentation mode. Sorry to interrupt.
Can you guys see my screen?
I can, but it's I can see all the slides.
Just one second. What about now?
And then start that slideshow.
Hey, Lindy, I think you have to resume the slideshow. That has happened to me in the past. So when you get to that, you see that little box there where it says resume slideshow? That little white box, click that.
Oh,
Resume. There you
There
go.
you go.
oh. There we go. Sorry.
We're good.
So good evening, Commissioner. This is Lindy Pham, Associate Engineer at the city. As John mentioned, Mary and I will be presenting the Carlsbad Boulevard Pedestrian Improvement Project. This is just to give you an update on the project. To give you a little background, staff were directed by the City Council to evaluate Carlsbad Boulevard for traffic calming. So this project was presented to the City Council on September 24th of last year, 2019, and also to the Traffic and Mobility Commission this year on January 6th. So Carlsbad Boulevard does not meet the definition of a residential street as defined by the Carlsbad Residential Traffic Management Program. That is our CRTMP. So therefore, it's not eligible for traffic calming under this program. So this project is based on recommendation found in the mobility elements of the general plan. Carlsbad Boulevard from Tamarack Avenue to State Street is posted at 30 miles per hour based on the engineering and traffic survey. And it's also classified as an identity street in a general plan mobility element. And for identity streets, the mobility element recommends traffic calming device such as curb extensions, or also known as bulb outs, or enhance the pedestrian crossing. So for Carlsbad Boulevard, there are 6 uncontrolled crossings that are currently equipped with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is the RFB. And these locations are at Hemlock Avenue, Cherry Avenue, Maple Avenue, Sycamore Avenue, Oak Avenue, and in front of the Army and Navy Academy. To augment the RFB at these 6 locations, staff is recommending curb extension wherever it's feasible, installing pedestrian activated in-pavement flashing lights, also updating the crosswalk to a continental style high visibility crosswalks, and also implementing green paint on bike lane and conflict areas. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Miriam. She will go over the proposed detail for each of these 6 locations.
Thank you, Lindy. And I know we have a new commissioner here, so I want to show you some example of what we propose for this project. The left you can see is the curb extension. So curb extension, the purpose of this is to reduce the effective street width at the crosswalk location, you can see here. And therefore will reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians and also improve the ability for pedestrians and drivers to see each other. To your right is the example of the in-pavement flashing lights that you can see here. And in our project, in this photo, is actually working with the LED sign, flashing sign. But in our case, the in-pavement lighting will be working with the existing RFB that's already out there. And what we propose is to have this in-pavement light work in conjunction with the existing RFB. And both of them will be pedestrians activated. So which means that when the pedestrian push a button, both will be flashing at the same time. That will kind of give an extra warning to drivers of pedestrian crossing the street. So this map shows you the 6 uncontrolled crosswalk on Carlsbad Boulevard that Lindy already mentioned that we are going to improve. And I'll walk you through each location, kind of show you the concept plan, and also highlight some design consideration and some features at each location. This first location is State Street by Army Navy Academy. Carlsbad Boulevard at this location is a 2-lane roadway, 1 lane each direction, with bike lane and a raised median at the center of the roadway. Parking is allowed on both sides. You can see parking lanes over here. Crosswalk marking has been already upgraded to high visibility continental style crosswalk. So as part of this project, we don't need to upgrade this. But we will, as Lindy mentioned, we will install in-pavement flashing lights and also curb extension on both sides of the street. And green paint bike lane in the conflict areas are also proposed, as you can see here, and also in the area approaching the crosswalks. The second location is Oak Avenue, Carlsbad Boulevard. From this point on to south is a 4-lane roadway, 2 lane in each direction, also with bike lanes in each direction and a raised median in the center. Parking is allowed at this location only on the east side of the street. Again, in pavement lighting, flashing light will be installed, and crosswalk marking will be upgraded to a high visibility style. Curb extension is only proposed on the east side of the street of the crosswalk because of the limited roadway width on the west side of the street to allow for curb extension. Sycamore Avenue is the next crosswalk location. Again, Carlsbad Boulevard is a bowling roadway with bike lanes and a raised median in the center. At this location, parking is not allowed on either side of the street, but curb extension is proposed on the west side of the crossing. In this case, we propose to eliminate the bike buffer, and the bike lane would need to be shifted to where the existing buffer location is with the curb extension. At Maple Street, again, parking is not allowed on both sides, and at this location, curb extension is not feasible because of the limited roadway width here. But we also, but like other locations, in pavement flashing light, high visibility crosswalk, and also green paint bike lane are proposed at this location. Cherry Lane, similar to previous location, curb extension proposed on the west side because there's parking lanes, so width available for this improvement, and all the other mentioned improvement will be proposed, as you can see on this exhibit. Lastly is Hemlock Avenue. At this location, curb extension is proposed again on the west side because there's parking lane on the west side of the street. Parking is not allowed on the east side, so curb extension is not feasible at that location. And I would like to point out at this location specifically, there are 2 existing ADA accessible parking spaces right adjacent to the existing crosswalk. So with this curb extension, we plan to maintain these 2 ADA parking spaces, but some improvement may need to be done to allow for ADA access for these 2 spaces. So which may include maybe extend this sidewalk slightly, but we will work with our consultant to work this out. And I just want to mention for all this location at the curb extension, one thing that we want to do is to make sure that we minimize the parking lots at all these locations. As we know, it's by the beach and parking is at a premium. So we'll work with our consultant to make sure the profile, how the layout of the curb extension will minimize the parking lots. Our next step is to finish our design. And after our design plans are complete, the project will be presented to the City Council for approval of project plans and specifications. Thank you very much. That concludes our presentation and available for answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments for this?
No, we do not.
Okay. Do we have commissioners' comments, questions? Okay, so 1, 2 hands. Okay, we're going to start with Commissioner Hunter.
On the Oak Avenue extension, and this is probably where Pete's going to also, it looks like you lose the bike lane and it gets forced out into the number 2 lane at that portion. I don't know if you can pull that up again. That's also kind of the left turn lane as people turn onto Oak, which is pretty busy there. Oops, there you go.
You see this?
Yeah.
This thing?
Yeah, on the east side where it bulbs out.
Yes.
It looks like it's bulbing out into what is the green lane right there. And are you forcing bikes into the number 2 lane as you come up, or is there space there to do it? Or when you engineer it, will there be space there to do it? I know this is kind of a mock-up.
Right. Maybe it's because of how it's presented on this, but our intent is to not encroach into the bike lanes.
Okay.
So the bike would not be forced to go into the second lane. So they will still have their bike lane.
Okay. And that'll actually give room for people to start taking their right-hand turn also. Okay, excellent. Thanks. That's all I had.
Commissioner Pensier, do you have a question?
You're muted, Pete.
All right. Can we start with the one at Oak?
Sure. Let me bring it back up again. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I want to state a little bit of background here first.
Mm-hmm.
The bulb outs and the continental crosswalks and the LEDs and all those things are certainly going to enhance pedestrian safety. But and there were 2 pedestrians that were killed there in 2014. And there's been at least one more since then, because we had a couple that came to one of our traffic safety commission meetings because they were so traumatized because they had witnessed it. And so I'm just a little concerned at this point that perhaps we're not being aggressive enough to really be able to eliminate the fatalities on that section of road. So the question is, on this case, is do the recent increases in speeding since COVID-19 lockdown indicate that traffic calming might be needed to prevent more of these fatal pedestrian, cyclist, or motorist crashes? And are any traffic calming measures being considered that might allow a reduction of the speed limit to 25 miles an hour? I don't see anything here that's really traffic calming. It's more just trying to make pedestrians more visible. So that's one question. Are any additional crosswalks being considered in addition to the ones that are there? Generally, there's a crosswalk every other intersection, and in between there's nothing. Are there any plans to reduce speeding and thereby improving the multimodal level of service? The second part of the comments I have on this is that recently I've done a great deal of research on the causes of car-bike crashes in the city. And it turns out that the vast majority of the crashes are caused by motorists. And the number one reason is when drivers basically right hook a cyclist. So they pass the cyclist and then complete their turn, and the cyclist can't avoid running into them. The second most common crash is what we call left cross, which means that the driver turns left, doesn't see the cyclist, and then the cyclist can't see them, and that causes another crash. So I'm questioning the use of green paint, especially at this intersection, because I'm trying to understand how that is going to improve the situation where when the bike lane becomes dashed, motorists are required to move into the bike lane in order to make the right-hand turn. So is the presence of green paint going to reduce the number of motorists that are going to make their turn from the number 2 lane? And my thought is, based on all the observations I've seen, that this will simply make it worse. There will be more motorists making their turn from out here without following the California Vehicle Code and making that turn from as far to the right as is practicable. And in addition, and making this turn at Oak, if you make it from the number 2 lane, you've completely eliminated the advantage of having the bulb out, because the driver is going to simply make that right-hand turn at full speed. They won't have to, right now they do it. You see the car that's underneath the bulb out, that driver will simply go further into the intersection and make the same turn at the same speed. So I'm at this point, I'm not convinced that this is the right solution for either the motorists, the pedestrians, or the cyclists. And in this case here, perhaps the best solution is to simply provide sharrows in this location in the number 2 lane. And perhaps then the motorists will pull over. We have sharrows later on. In fact, you can see one in this picture right near the letters CA in Carlsbad, where the bike lane disappears. Oh, that might not be them. It might be further down because we still have the bike lane there. Note that the bike lane here is right in the door zone. And so myself and anybody else who would ride here would be on the paint on the left side in order to avoid being doored. As far as the green paint on the southbound side of the street, I don't see, again, how this is going to improve the situation where drivers will go past the cyclist and then make the turn from the number 2 lane rather than moving into the bike lane as they are required to do by law when the bike lane becomes dashed. If we can go to the next exhibit, exhibit 3. Here, the green paint on the bike lane on the southbound side is probably a good idea to help the cyclist not run into the curb. But so it doesn't really matter much whether it's there or not for people that are watching where they're going. But the same situation occurs on the northbound side, northbound direction, again, there and then at all the other locations further south. So if you go to Exhibit 4, you see the same thing. Go to Exhibit 5, same thing. Go to Exhibit 6, same thing. So my question here is are we willing to do this? Are we willing to put green paint, especially on the northbound side, without fully understanding how this is going to impact both the motorist behavior and the cyclist behavior? Because as the way the California the requirements for bike lanes is they need to be dashed before you get to an intersection, and the purpose for that is to allow the motorists to go to the right and for the cyclists then to move out into the traffic lane and pass on the left if they need to. And since this is by far the most common crash in Carlsbad, I think this really needs to be rethought. Finally, I asked if we're planning, if this doesn't work, and if we still continue to kill people on Carlsbad Boulevard, are there any other plans in the future to perform actual traffic calming measures, such as a road diet with roundabouts at some of these intersections, with chicanes, or any other thing that would actually reduce the speed so that we can get it down below a lethal speed? As we all know, speed kills. And if you can get the speed down far enough, even if people do get hit, they usually don't die. So my question then is, are we stuck? Are we really planning to do this regardless of understanding how it's going to impact driver and cyclist behavior? And secondly, what are our plans for the future to go beyond what we're doing here? I see this as basically kicking the can down the road, as we've done many, many times before. This is still a very auto-centric place, and doesn't seem to meet the MMLOS guidelines for this area.
Okay, I'm gonna let the engineers answer any of the questions that you can for Commissioner Pensier.
Well, I guess I could start. There were a lot of questions there. I don't know if I can remember them all, but as far as this particular project, we are asked by City Council to present traffic calming options for Carlsbad Boulevard. We went to City Council on September 24th and presented 3 corridors, essentially: College Boulevard, Tamarack Avenue, and Carlsbad Boulevard. In that staff report and in the subsequent staff report to our Traffic and Mobility Commission, we presented the background data on Carlsbad Boulevard, it being a 30 mile per hour posted corridor, identified as an identity street in our general plan mobility element. And looking at that, the mobility element specifically for identity streets says, quote unquote, traffic calming devices such as curb extensions or enhanced pedestrian crossings should be considered and evaluated for implementation. Based on those recommendations, we proposed this project. Council said go ahead and implement. So that's the basis of this project. It didn't involve additional traffic calming measures outside of what we are recommending. It doesn't mean that we'll not consider those in the future. There are other projects along the boulevard that are coming that are evaluating a complete streets type of concept. There's a Terramar project that's proposing a roundabout at the Cannon Road. We're looking at Carlsbad Boulevard and Tamarack Avenue as another big project. We're kind of revisiting the roundabout issue there to see if that would be appropriate, but not as part of this project. this project is specifically constrained to the recommendations that we are proposing. So I hope that answers that first set of questions that you had about additional measures. We're not proposing any additional marked crosswalks at this time. This project is defined by the marked uncontrolled crosswalks that we currently have and enhancing those. As far as the green treatments at the intersections, it's my understanding that the green dash does not preclude vehicles from entering and turning right. It's still dashed. It's still a recommended treatment at an intersection by NACTO, as far as I know. It's striping only, so it's something that we haven't implemented in the city on a widespread basis. We're looking at green as a way of highlighting conflict areas, and we'd be glad to evaluate it and see how it works. And if it does encourage cars to not encroach into that dashed area, we'd be happy to reconsider that and modify as necessary. But as it stands, the green does not preclude, at least in my opinion, cars from entering that area. The law's the law. They should enter. It's still dashed, that they would move to that area to turn right. But again, we'd be happy to make that evaluation as we implement a green curb going forward.
Yeah, and if I may, I have some comments to add to Mr. Kim's comments to address a couple of the items. One, just while we're on the topic of the NACTO issue with the green paint, most of the state actually is trending towards that type of a design during the conflict areas. Some cities are more aggressive and they're painting green paint on their actual bike lanes. And I actually think it's a good first step to just use the green paint in conflict areas and merging conflict areas. So that's what the National Association of City Transportation Officials, their design guidelines are going. And I haven't seen any studies that show that it's not being effective. So we can look into it further and we can have that discussion. But that's that's the direction of the industry, the way it's trending right now. Secondly, I heard a comment from the commissioner regarding if there is additional traffic calming that was done, and the actual curb extensions. Anything you do to create the perception of friction, that is very effective traffic calming. So the curb extensions and any even additional anything that will increase that perceived friction helps with speed reduction and traffic calming effects. So that is actually traffic calming, and even a vehicle having to slow down more to take a right turn due to that curb extension and the tighter radius, that's effective traffic calming. So that addresses that issue. I think, John, you adequately covered the issues that we're looking at additional intersection control at Tamarack. Depending on the outcome, we're looking at all of the design issues to see if a roundabout is a feasible option at that intersection. Depending on that outcome, we could look at the approaches to that intersection. So nothing's off the table at this point, but as Mr. Kim mentioned, we are addressing what council has directed us to address with this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
And, I do want to point out that the concept plans that we presented, they're very preliminary. They're not final. We haven't even reviewed and commented on them yet. We received them, I think it was last week, and thought it would be helpful to share with our traffic and mobility commissioner so that they can provide input to us at this preliminary stage. If there are ideas that make engineering sense for us, we'd be glad to incorporate them, but they're in no way final at this point. And I think this is the way the Traffic and Mobility Commission should work. We should be presenting these at an early stage so that we can get your input. And so I just wanted to clarify that they're very conceptual at this point. And there is room for us to make adjustments to these concept plans.
That's great. We really appreciate that because I think if we all work together. I see you, Commissioner Linky. I'll let you go next. If we all work together, I think it's going to give a better product to the residents because I understand, as Tom was saying, that the state is going to green paint, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's working. So if it doesn't serve the purpose, and personally as a driver, I am not a cyclist. I'm a driver. I got my driver's license about 20 years ago, and back then they had no green paint for bicyclists on the driver's license test. So I can understand where Commissioner Pensier comes from. I am confused sometimes if I'm supposed to go on that green paint or not. So I'm sure many other drivers feel the same. So just because everybody else does it, if it doesn't serve the purpose, that doesn't mean that we should do it. And I also want to echo Commissioner Pensier's the idea of this. I feel for pedestrians, this is the most dangerous road that we have in the city. And it's also the busiest, the most crossed road because of the beach and people parking on the side roads. So the way I see it, when drivers drive there, a lot of them don't drive for commute. A lot of them just drive for enjoying the view. And they're very, especially in the summer times, it's very easy to get distracted looking at the ocean and the view. And with the sun reflecting on the rapid flashing beacons and everything else, is very hard for us visibility wise. So it just dawned on me, I don't know if it's because I just drove somewhere around in Seattle right now, but I was wondering if it's anything else as a sensor, meaning we use only the visual sensors right now for the drivers. Can we use those raised horizontal lines that you put kind of like little speed bumps that just like, you know, shakes the car before you approach the crosswalk? That way that if the driver, and this is just an idea, if the driver is distracted visually and has not seen the sidewalk, then that's kind of like a wake-up call or some kind of markings on the road that it kind of lets them know that something else is happening, so then they can assess or, you know, whatever you want to call it, turn and see what's happening. So that's just an idea. I do feel too many people died on those crosswalks, and we do need to do something about it. It's not enough. What we're doing right now, even with that, if we're just going on the visual part, people are distracted, drivers are distracted. We just need to think of something else. And I really appreciate staff bringing this to us so we can have a conversation and hear our concerns as residents and see what we can work together. With that said, I have Commissioner Linky having comments.
You actually covered the main one I was going to ask about, the green dashes. I think Commissioner Pensier's concern is that the green dashes are going to, I assume, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but the concern is that the existence of the thick green area there is actually going to inhibit cars from going into the bike lane, because he wants the car to go, you know, look, make sure there are no bicycles there, but to go into that bike lane to make that turn. It's the unexpected sudden right turn if the green dashes are keeping cars outside, thinking that they're not allowed in that area. But on the other hand, if everyone is going to green paint, it's more a matter of education that both bicyclists and drivers need to be educated and learn over the course of time. As more green paint is added, you know, bicyclists are probably going to have to be extra cautious, maybe when the green paint first starts appearing, but then over the years, people will get used to it and know. And I don't know if there's any signage that can go onto the street saying you need to go into the green dashed area to turn or not. The other comment I had was that we've got some areas of Carlsbad Boulevard have, I think, upwards of 1,200 cars per hour going So you almost need 2 lanes in some areas, but then they're competing with the pedestrians and the bicyclists. And then if you want to make the pedestrians safer and you have the bulb outs are forcing the bicyclists near to the vehicle lanes. So it's like a competition among all 3, and we just need to come to the safest conclusion here. And as far as the speed is concerned, I don't, 30 miles per hour doesn't seem that fast to me, but if we can make sure that people are actually going that speed, that's sort of a goal.
Okay. So staff heard our comments. So is staff going to bring back when more of a final design?
We're not required to. We can, if that would be to the interest of the commission. We've already brought it once. This is the second time. I don't want to get into a situation where it holds up the process when we've been directed by council to proceed with this project. But if there's an opportunity to do that, we could consider that. I also want to mention that one of the things that we didn't cover in the presentation was we're looking at lighting as well. The crosswalks, we wanted to make sure that they're well lit. So that's one of the features that we're looking at, is augmenting, improving the street lighting in the area of the crosswalks at all these locations. I just wanted to mention that because it didn't show up in the conceptual plans.
My main concern is the yellow flashing with the yellow sun is just not as visible. So with those raised horizontal lines that shade the card, is that something that is used or can be used in Carlsbad?
We can consider it, but just from my engineering experience, raised features equals noise, and then noise in a close location to those people that live on Carlsbad Boulevard. It may not be a popular choice to have that rumble strip for every 1,200 vehicles per car that rolls over them. So for that reason, we haven't seriously considered the vertical features, especially in residential areas.
Yeah.
And to note, that's 1,200 vehicles per hour. It's higher, much higher than that throughout the day.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then maybe we can build something overhead to make those crosswalks more visible. Eventually, we're going to have to, I mean, after how many deaths are we going to have to do something more drastic than just a little bit of light? Okay. Well, and do we have Vice Chair Perez?
Yeah, I just have one question, just more of a clarification from me. So if we could go back to that exhibit where it shows Maple and Carlsbad Boulevard. I think.
Right here.
Yes, thank you. So with this recommendation, I just wanted to kind of understand. So for this construction, I believe the corner of Maple Avenue and Carlsbad Boulevard going northbound, that one right corner. Yes, correct. So this area is also going to be part of that ADA improvement. I just wanted to clarify that I noticed on the construction plans, this is not this plans, but the construction plans on that other agenda, that there is no, on the construction plans, there's no identification of those push signals to light up the crosswalk. So again, I'm sorry if this is little, but it just seems like I just wanted to make sure that we're both clear on that it's not going to be removed, or if the construction team understands that there is a light switch there, or a push to ignite it sounds so bad, to light up the crosswalk. So that's all I wanted to comment on.
Thank you for that comment. Noted.
Any other, Commissioner Linky?
Just a quick question. I think it's always important when we're talking about accidents to know if there was a known cause so that we know what the correct solution is on the deaths that occurred at that intersection. If it was a drunk driver going 80 miles an hour, I don't think, any of these are going to stop that. Was there a specific cause assigned to those deaths? Because that's probably what we need to address. If there's like a consistent cause, was it the speed? Was it under the influence? Does anybody know?
Commissioner Bessier, do you know?
I know the two that occurred in 2014, one of them was blamed on the driver. The driver was not drunk. It happened in the middle of the day. No unusual conditions. The other one happened at after dark, and the pedestrian was DUI. They were blamed for it. The driver walked. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't, just say, well, we're not going to do anything because the pedestrian was under the influence. But in the other case, the one that I know of, it was definitely the driver's fault, and there was no DUI involved. The third one, where the individual came in last year, perhaps, and told us that they had witnessed one, that couldn't have been back at 2014, so it must be relatively recent. I don't know about that one.
That's just the fatalities. What about other accidents that pedestrians did not die?
Pardon me?
I said that these are just the fatalities we're talking about, but
Yes.
I'm sure there have been a lot of accidents with pedestrians that did not die.
Right. And that should be, I think that should be one thing that we should look at, because just because they weren't fatal doesn't mean they couldn't have been. And that would be a worthwhile project for perhaps the city staff to look into, using TIMS is, I found, the best way to do that, the traffic information management system, because they show a picture of where it is, they give the date, the time, they talk about who's at fault, and so on and so forth. And you can look at that, and then if you had a Vision Zero program, what you would do is sit down with each one of those and you would say, okay, what can we do to fix this? What do you do to prevent recurrence? And in some cases it's not clear, but in a lot of other cases it is. And
well, I know traffic engineering works with the police department on all this on a regular basis, and tracks all the accidents are across town, where they happen, but particularly a fatality. And I actually get involved in it, but I'm not, there's no police hat on here. So that's just not my position on this, but I'm sure John can comment on that. But over the last few years, I know of one. It wasn't even anybody crossing. It was a bad motorist that kind of ran over the guy almost on the sidewalk. But other than that, it is not a common call out for pedestrian accidents compared to what a lot of the other places around town that I've seen and responded to. But I'll leave it to John and Tom and Frank, because again, the police department tracks every single one of these that are reported, and works the department on that. So over to you guys.
All right, I might add just a few comments, because I feel like I just want to emphasize, I guess, that the project is being brought forward to improve pedestrian safety, and also we're taking measures to improve bicycling safety and comfort levels on the street as well. So our reason for moving forward with the NACDO's suggestions for green paint in the conflict areas is that, to highlight conflict areas. Just so the commission can appreciate, all of your comments are memorialized, and you can support a project and also highlight some of the concerns that you still feel are something to address while moving forward on a project that improves the situation. So I just wanted to end on that note, that while while there may be some feelings that maybe some things aren't going far enough, if you clearly articulate that message is received and it's documented in the minutes, and you can still move forward with the project and feel good about it while still emphasizing that you think some things still need to be looked at further. Thank you.
We really appreciate that. Commissioner Pensier?
I want to clarify one thing. I'm not opposed to green paint in conflict areas. Not at all. In fact, I want to thank the staff for the green paint they installed at the conflict area on the long bike lane in front of Costco on Palomar Airport Road. They just completed that and it looks good. I mean, I think the green paint could be maybe a little lighter, could have used more paint, but other than that, it's great because that is a true conflict area where the cyclist is going straight and it tells the cyclist, yeah, you're going straight, and the motorist has to yield to the cyclist to get across it. And so if you have a right turn only lane, that's a perfect place for green paint. When you don't have a right turn only lane and the cyclist is already up against the curb, that's where I don't think it works because of the fact that in Carlsbad, people do not know that they're supposed to move into that bike lane. You put green paint there, they're going to be even less likely to do it, which negates the advantage of doing it in the first place. And
right. I was just going to say that I hear you loud and clear. I understand that's the issue. And in a different city, another coastal city up in the city of San Clemente, we had that debate fairly frequently. And as an interim, we went with Sharrows in the conflict area, but we were heading towards the NACTO standard. And the NACTO standard is, as I said, throughout the state and throughout the country, it's going in that direction. So I think Commissioner Linke summarized it well. I think people, no matter what you do, there's going to be some that find it more favorable and some that find it less favorable. So it's always, everything we're doing is really a balance on to try and find the best solution for Carlsbad at this time. So, we can talk about that if now is the time to go forward with that treatment for that situation where we don't have a separated or a dedicated right-hand turn lane. My feeling is it's an appropriate way to delineate that conflict zone. If you could find any studies that show that it's not being effective, we definitely want to provide what's best for the community. So we're all ears. We'll do our part to research it, but I'm not seeing the evidence that shows that it's not effective at this point. So that's just the background on the issue from our standpoint. We want to definitely do what's best for the community. So if you know of anything that highlights that it's not serving the purpose, then please bring it forward to us.
We really appreciate that. Okay, with that said, there's no voting on this, right? We're only here for...
And to receive all of your input, which is very helpful. I think we will have a discussion with staff with all that input. We didn't come with any predetermined decisions in our head. I sincerely wanted to get the commissioner's input on this, and I think we received a lot of good comments that'll lead to some good discussion about how to move forward with this project. And it may not look exactly like as presented based on the comments that we've received from the commission.
And then to add on to Mr. Kim's final comments, our intention is to exactly what we did, bring an item to you during the conceptual phase so we can get your comments at a really important and critical time while we're still designing the project. Our intention is actually to bring it back to you if an item is going to council. If it's at the final design phase, it's likely going to be on consent, so you can see what we're going to be reporting to council as far as recommending approval of the plans and specifications and authorization to advertise. But that way you're seeing the completion of the design phase, and you have another opportunity to comment on the project if you feel inclined. So that's our approach at this time.
Thank you so much. Before we go to the next one, I think we should take a 5-minute break because we've been on it for 2 hours. And the next one can be lengthy. So please put your video on off and in your mic on mute, and I will see you back at 5:21. Thank you.